Welcome back to Counting the Cost, your weekly business stop here on Al Jazeera. I'm Kamal Santamaria. To General Motors now, an American automotive icon whose financial problems have stretched right across the world. In Europe right now, the GM name's pretty much mud after an 11th hour U-turn over the sale of its European business Opel to a Canadian-Russian consortium. Now, this was a deal the German Chancellor Angela Merkel worked really hard to get over the line. It was going to secure thousands of German jobs. In many ways, it contributed to her securing her job for a second term. Now it's all fallen through the floor and the reaction has been furious. David Chater has more from Berlin.
The protests are growing on the streets and in the highest government circles over the U-turn performed by the American car maker. Opel has 4 plants here and unions fear 2 of them will now be forced to close. Workers have begun a series of walkouts and wildcat strikes.
I won't allow some American management to think they can maximize earnings by taking German employees hostage.
It's thought around 10,000 jobs, that's 1/5 of Opel's workforce, will have to go. It will have to persuade unions to agree to find $390 million in savings, a concession already accepted under the previous deal with Magna. Then there's the matter of a $2.2 billion emergency loan. Germany wants the money back by the end of this month.
The German Chancellor was given the unwelcome news just as she was leaving the United States, somewhat puncturing the mood of euphoria surrounding her meeting with President Obama. The mood here in Berlin in political circles is one of anger and even humiliation.
Opel employs a total of 54,000 workers in Europe, but 25,000 of them are based in Germany. There was anger too in Russia at General Motors' decision. A Russian bank was part of the rescue deal. Although German politicians were calling it the ugly face of turbo-capitalism, many analysts were saying Opel would be better off remaining as part of General Motors and a bigger industrial network.
This is a good thing for GM's bottom line. I think it will be a good thing long-term for everybody. It's just that in the meantime, there are going to be some injured parties.
The bottom line in Germany, though, is saving German jobs. Government officials are saying General Motors has destroyed any trust in their word and their reputation will suffer for years to come. David Chater, Al Jazeera, Berlin.
So you see there, don't you, the huge impact on the everyman that this General Motors decision has had. Ironically, it says it took the decision because the economy is actually improving. But consider the impact elsewhere too. And we said this before, GM's woes have reached far and wide, even to the kibbutz. A kibbutz being a type of working commune found in Israel. They're usually associated with farming and agriculture. Now, though, they're diversifying a little bit. The one we're about to take you to actually makes car parts for General Motors. Nicole Johnson has this report from Israel.
The wheels of industry are turning at this kibbutz in Israel. It manufactures car parts that are sold to General Motors. For years, the American car industry has been the backbone of the economy of this kibbutz. It usually turns over more than $50 million, and this gives its members a secure job.
I have been working here for 38 years. It's my life. If I don't go to work here, then I feel that something is missing. So I come day after day, and they can't tell me to stay away.
But the global economic crisis has come home to the kibbutz. Export orders are down, and its profits have dropped 50% in the last year. This has forced it to shut down one of its 3 factories and fire staff who were not members of the kibbutz. It's been a shock to the system, because this is a traditional kibbutz, which usually has a strong bank balance. And here everyone receives the same hourly pay, regardless of job.
I think this is one of the reasons that we got through the crisis, because everybody was affected equally.
When times are tough, most members like Avlon Segev, who has 4 kids, are thankful they're living in a kibbutz.
It's like buying the best insurance policy in the world. Like, you can never hit the bottom of the barrel here. There's always a net for you. Nothing really, really bad can happen for you or your kids in the kibbutz.
Before the factories, it was actually agriculture that helped this kibbutz survive. Now today, farming's a very small part of the kibbutz movement. But in this global financial crisis, it's ended up being farming, its traditional roots, that has helped the kibbutz survive. Agriculture has given the kibbutz an economic buffer. But most kibbutz are today based on industry, and 2/3 of Israel's more than 250 kibbutzim are now privatised, with members paying for what the kibbutz provides. But Ein Hashafet has held on to the old ways. 2 meals a day are still eaten in the communal dining room, and schools, health and entertainment is provided.
We were not very greedy. I mean, our houses, our standard of living is quite moderate. It's enough for our life. We appreciate the values, we appreciate the country atmosphere and the community life.
With over 100 children in the kibbutz, there's a good chance some of them will grow up to take over what their parents and grandparents began. Nicole Johnston for Counting the Cost.
And finally to the Philippines, which has been hit by 4 typhoons in less than a month. Obviously a huge human impact, but also a big hit to the economy there. Tens of thousands of farmers lost their livelihoods. Poverty is now rife in what's supposed to be the country's food basket. But the erratic weather pattern is now spurring farmers to join a new satellite-based micro-insurance scheme, the first of its kind in the country. As Divya Gopalan reports from Iloilo in the central Philippines.
There was a time when Francis Bedro was a farmer without fields. A year ago, Typhoon Frank wiped out most of the farms in Iloilo.
This whole place was flooded. I lost everything. I couldn't pay my debts, so I had to look for another job.
For 3 months, instead of working in his rice paddies, he labored on building sites. He managed to lease back his 2 hectares of land when he joined a cooperative. Members of the Bakabak co-op meet every month. Many of them have similar tales of farms ravaged by typhoons. What's unusual is that all of them are now insured against the weather.
Years before, these months we were experiencing heavy rains. But now, there are typhoons in the other parts of the country, but here in our area, we are experiencing drought.
Up until 30 years ago, the Philippines grew all the rice it needed. Now it's the world's biggest importer, and experts say it's due to a combination of rapidly growing population, poor governance, and climate change. The recent typhoons destroyed tens of thousands of farms across the country. Rice farmers were the hardest hit, with losses at around $40 million. This area was mostly spared, but farmers here are no strangers to devastation. It takes just over 5 months from the time the field is sown until the grain reaches the mill. At most, the small farmers of Iloilo will have 2 harvests annually, and if they are good, they will make up to $800 a year. Barely enough to live on and invest in the next planting season. As commercial banks consider the farmers too risky, they get their credit from TSKI, a microfinance group.
If they experience typhoons and lose all their crops, they have nowhere to go except maybe to loan sharks. So they go back to the cycle of poverty in which they cannot move on.
The farmers' insurance is provided by Microinsure's Weather Index Typhoon policy. Their payouts are based on how close a farm is to the center of a typhoon's path and the wind speed at the location.
Because it is satellite-based, you don't need to go to the place anymore. There is no need for assessors, okay? And you can gather the data on the typhoon track based on the meteorological organization or what we call the weather station. Automatically, you can generate the data and determine the payoff.
Which means that farmers don't have to file a claim and they automatically get the payment within 10 days of the storm.
Now I have my insurance. I will never have to leave my farm and look for work elsewhere.
And it means that the weather will never take away Francis Bedros and his cooperative's land again. Divya Gopalan, Al Jazeera, Iloilo, Philippines.
And that's just about it for this week, but check us out online when you get the chance. This is the business news page at aljazeera.net/English, the latest financial headlines and the link to our business blog there on the right. And if you head to the programs section of the site as well, you'll find the Counting the Costs page where you can catch up with this week's and some of our previous shows. It's all at aljazeera.net/English. That's it from Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.